Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Roleplay Life podcast. I'm your host for tonight. I'm John. It is number 5, not number 6. It's definitely number 5. I am joined today by my usual co-hosts, Dan.
Hello there.
And Gareth.
Good evening.
Hey, we did it. This is the
We
first
made
try,
it.
not the second try.
This is in no way a redo. None.
No
way.
not at all. So tonight we're going to do things a little bit differently. Since we've been off for a week, we are going to go through some of the big news that's been happening in the RPG world at the last time since we've spoken, because a couple of things have been happening and we wanted to address them. So we are going to start with that. And the first thing let's start with the little bit of news that we have, which is Fire Emblem, the original NES game, has been announced by Nintendo and is going to be re-released on the 4th of December on the Switch eShop. It will be $4.99, which is a reasonable price for a new game. That was originally released in 1990 on the original NES, and it's also going to be one of these limited release games that's only going to be coming out until the 31st of March next year. So if you want to grab it when it comes out. The thing I have a problem with this is that there is also an anniversary edition that's going to be coming out. That is £50, and I've got an actual list here of what's included. It's a deluxe art book, a replica game box, an instruction book and map, but no replica. But no replica cart, no cartridge.
What?
So exactly.
Yeah.
What?
You're basically paying £50 for a code, but the art book is really nice and the box is really nice.
I'm sure it is, but it's not.
But
if that's how you're trying to sell me something, Gareth, don't give up the day job, Jesus.
but this is the thing. I have very strong opinions on many factors of this.
No.
One, as a massive Fire Emblem nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Two, as someone who has a very divisive history with collector's edition products. We know, John has a collection of these said items. Is it Ni no Kuni 2 that you bought recently, or was it the original Ni no?
One, the original Ni no Kuni.
Yeah.
White Witch edition.
Yeah.
And
sorry, after you, John.
I agree with Gareth there. It's a lot of money to ask for not very much in return, to be quite honest. Yeah. Especially for a game that is okay. It's the 30th year since the original Fire Emblem was released. It never actually came out over here. That's why they're making such a big deal about it. My other problem with it is that it's in English, which is fine. But if you're a European and don't speak English, it's still being released in all the other territories in Europe, but only in English. You cannot get it in Spanish or French or Italian or German or any of those other languages. It's not available to you unless you speak English, which is kind of disgraceful, if you're asking me. It's not a long game. I can't imagine there being a lot of text to translate into the various languages, but the lack of effort that's been put into this for a game that has been fan translated before. It's not a brand new thing. It's not some unearthed project that's reared its head. It's been in Japan for 30 years. People have had their hands on it and have translated it into English and other languages as well. It's not.
I think it's also I'm in an intriguing point for this. As one, I don't own a Nintendo Switch, and two, it's my birthday the day after. So if you want to buy me a Nintendo Switch so I can play Fire Emblem, that would be greatly appreciated. Now, the issues I've got with this are, as John says, there's a level of laziness to the products. The release date is very interesting. I mean, is it $4.99? So £5 just to get the download. So it's basically going to try and bolster into, because Fire Emblem Awakening really, really grabbed people in. Like, the other Fire Emblem games have always been very solid games. I remember getting a Game Boy Micro 10, 15 years ago for Christmas, and one of the games in it was Sacred Stones. And I sat down to it after my tea, and I played it for a bit, and someone said, "Oh, we're going up to bed." And I was like, "I've only been playing for 40 minutes." I looked at the clock, and it was midnight, and I had been playing for 6 hours straight.
Well, I would say that is Sacred Stones, which is a classic game, and this is Fire Emblem, the original game from 15 years prior.
So yeah. And this is where I was sort of going to go to is you're right. It's a very old game. It was originally for the NES. So it's 8-bit. They've basically like revamped it a little bit, haven't they? They've like juiced up the graphics slightly. They've made it more.
There are save states that you can use.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It's a strange product. The fact that
they're releasing it around Christmas and it finishes just before the end of the fiscal year is when the limited edition runs, because April the 1st is the beginning of the financial year.
Not just the limited edition, the actual online download will disappear as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is they're trying to key in, because like wasn't Three Houses like really popularly streamed when it released on Twitch as well?
Yeah, I mean I did that too.
Yeah, I mean there was also some a little bit of pushback due to one of the voice actors of Three Houses later on, but
yeah,
like you get the feeling that there's a combination of cynicism and nostalgia blending together in the festive period, and I appreciate that.
I think it's just because Nintendo doesn't have a lot to offer people at this time. I think that's the main reason. I just think that it's an odd move to give this anniversary edition, seeing as it's never been over here, so that people shouldn't have nostalgia for it.
Yeah,
I know they have nostalgia for Fire Emblem, but don't release this. Release Sacred Stones. Release Sacred Stones on the Switch. That would have had a much better response.
They also tried to, was it Shadow of the Dragon, which is number 5, which is before what we got. Fire Emblem. What we get in the West called Fire Emblem is actually Fire Emblem 6, and I think they re-released on the DS Fire Emblem Shadow of the Dragon or something, which was Fire Emblem 5, and it was very boring. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who may be disappointed with the re-release, because Fire Emblem is the two big things that Fire Emblem are known for are the triangle system for weapons.
That's not even in this game, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to get to. And the support system, which also isn't in that game because the NES couldn't support it. So there's going to be a lot of people attempting to get them ships going, and nothing's going to sail. And we're just going to get an array of situations where there's going to be disgruntled fans, a little bit like some people got a little bit disgruntled with I can never remember the name of the follow-up to Awakening, because it was released as 2 games.
It was 3 games.
Or was it 3?
But
it was one storyline over 3 games.
That's right.
Which reminded me of also a very unsuccessful game series, The Legend of Zelda, with Legend of Zelda Seasons, where you basically, on the Game Boy Color, you had
4 swords.
No, way before that. So basically, there's the 3 main gods, isn't there, of the Legend of Zelda?
Spoilers.
It's not really a spoiler at all. How old's the Legend of Zelda right now?
I've never played it. You're spoiling it for me.
Yeah. But basically,
I see Mr. Strawman is out here.
But in the 3 games, you basically are playing the game suited to one of the gods. It's like buying a Pokemon game for you pick blue or red.
Yeah.
And that was basically how, because I think it was one of the Capcom made Legend of Zelda games.
Oh, good.
Because I think Nintendo paid Capcom to do 7.
Really?
And it was
they put 3 into one game just with different names. Okay.
Well, basically, they were trying to rival Pokemon and Legend of Zelda. To be fair, Capcom did also the Minish Cap, which was a really fun Legend of Zelda game. For me, it was also very painful because I played it on the Game Boy Micro, which...
if you're not sure what the Game Boy Micro is, it's the smallest Nintendo device they've ever made. And
it's about this big. physically.
It's smaller than that. It's
But,
smaller.
yeah,
than that.
It is. It's that's thinner, and I can't even imitate it. And I had a screen.
I've got one over there. If I wasn't all wired up, I'd just go get one and show you how tiny it is. But doing some of the boss fights, I literally had to pause the game, put it on the charger, and walk away while going.
Just button mashing.
Yeah. Anyone
Well,
that's
not
listening
even that. There's a lot of hand flexing.
Anyone listening to the audio podcast, if you're not sure how big and micro is, it's probably about the size of a chocolate bar. It's very, very small.
And not even like a double pack chocolate bar, like probably, like a twirl, something like that.
Yeah. But bring it back to Fire Emblem, bottom line, we're not really happy. I consider it a curiosity, and at £5, it might be worth a purchase just to say that you've got it, and maybe I'll play it at some point. But for the most part, I'm not going to touch that anniversary edition for love nor money. It's way too much money for what they want.
I've heard of people who just got the anniversary edition, and I think the biggest gripe from what I've seen on some forums is it's like, even if it's a hollow cartridge, just you're giving me a box, put a hollow cartridge in it, just something.
Exactly. It doesn't even have to actually have the cartridge in it. Just give a replacement. Like, it's not like there's not loads of those knocking around. Yeah. All you're doing is you're taking the sticker off and putting one on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the. One of my friends used to work for like the secondhand games industry, and I loved the name they used for like knockoff Game Boy cartridges and DS cartridges of Pretendo.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
It's like, right. Apparently, John will know the shop quickly. Lee's Games in Morecambe. There was a guy, and I'm not going to use his real name, but it was like Pretendo Jack, and they were like, "Can you please stop coming into my shop trying to trade me fakes?" Because he'd come in with like all these, like, "Oh, I've got original Pokemon." It's like, yes, you downloaded an emulator, you put it on a card, and you put it in a cartridge case. This is not a real product. I cannot sell this.
Yep.
No. So that was Fire Emblem. The other thing we have on the docket for news is probably one that most people have heard of already, but it's the delay of Cyberpunk 2077, and it's been delayed until December 10th, along which multiple reports have come out of Project Red of the super crunch that is going to be occurring in this time frame. And the death threats that the people working on the game have also received, which is, it's sad that people assume that any kind of release pushback like this would follow with death threats, but that is, of course, how the games industry is run, because it's a horrible hellscape and everyone is horrible.
We say that, but before we recorded, I was on about the pushback of Bravely Default 2. And Square Enix really killed off some good faith that people had in them as a developer from Octopath Traveler, because they put the game out as a demo and they were like, "Oh, give us your feedback," and then proceeded to promptly ignore said feedback and release Octopath Traveler virtually as was. And I think one of the scenarios we've got here is maybe it's the fact that Square have basically gone like, "Look, we're listening to your feedback on this demo, and we don't want a repeat of this." And what's probably happened now is, how many times have these games been pushed back now?
Cyberpunk's been pushed back 4 times, Bravely Default 3 times, I think. The main problem I had with Octopath Traveler wasn't anything that was related to the demo, though. I really enjoyed the demo. It was the late game aspect of it that was a problem. Yeah. But back to Cyberpunk. Sorry, Dan.
I was just going to say, aren't Square Enix fans still waiting for a decent modern Final Fantasy game? It just appears to be re-releases up to now, doesn't it?
I mean, 14 is a favourite for many people. Although I haven't played it, I can't speak. The last modern Final Fantasy game I played was 12. So no, that's not true. Actually, I played 13 and I hated it. But
I think that they've just also recently released, is it a preview or a demo of 16 as well?
Really? I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah. I haven't heard of that either.
Apparently, there's like a big big world, lots of tribes. It's a little bit like the Avatar, from what I could gather from what I was listening to. In the fact that this, so there's a kid and he's expected to have this icon. I think the person was on about. So like he have the summon materia. Yeah. So they're now known as icons, and one of the situations that happens is this character. I want to say his name's Clive.
Yes, it is actually, yeah, because there's a big hoo-ha, because basically everyone around the world is like, that's a good name. And then everyone in England is just like, no, it's not, it's horrible.
It just made me think very much when I heard the name of, there's a comedian called Nigel Nung. I'm probably butchered his surname, I'm really sorry. It's infamously Uncle Roger on YouTube. And he was commenting that being from Malaysia, he says, yes, we've got British names, but what you don't realise is you ended your occupation in about 1950. So none of the names have modernised. We've not got cool modern names. We've not even got 80s names. So like to us, names like Dudley and Clive are still kind of cool / exotic. And that's kind of how the scenario's gone. Dan's face. I apologise for the term there, but it's like we want to we've had the British heritage and we're going to still use British naming convention. However, it's from like the 1950s. Like you've got Nigel and Edith, and such, and that's why we get these.
To a lot of other countries, they do seem very cool names. It's just to us they seem weird, and because that's the name of your gran and granddad.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, the best thing that I saw about this was that what they were actually doing is they were delaying it until they could get a much better announcement for a further delay to be put out into the media. That's what it's only a month delay. In realistic terms, it's a month delay. Yeah. And the responses to this were, in a month, what can they possibly do that can also pass all of the Microsoft, Sony, and wherever else it's been released checks? What can they possibly do? Steam? Hold on, no, it's not. What's Cyberpunk 2077 being run through? What game? PC?
Pretty sure it's Steam.
Is it Steam?
Yeah, it's either Steam or Epic.
Yeah, I couldn't remember which one it was.
I'm pretty sure it's on Stadia. Maybe you're thinking about Stadia.
Oh, right. Oh, well, that's another thing that's also newsworthy, but I'm not even going to mention it. But the idea is that what's the delay of a month going to do? They're already crunching 100-hour weeks. 100-hour weeks. Like, I physically can't imagine it.
No, I can't. I can imagine crunching 100-hour months, though.
Yes, I'd love to. I'd love to do that. Yeah,
do that every month. Yeah. I mean, is that 100 hours per man, or because how are we talking about the man hours?
Yeah,
you've got to also ask, like, as someone looking from the outside, is what does that do to your development teams? Like,
they subcontract it. They don't care. They don't care. They just subcontract it all out.
Well, that's not true, because there's a lot of games companies who do a ton of stuff in house, and they basically what they're doing, working people into the ground, grinding them under the millstone. Is it Ubisoft? I know they have they
subcontracted
out. No, they have a series of sub developers.
Not anymore.
They rotate through.
They sold them. Did you not see the news? They've sold them, and they've also closed Ubisoft Montreal, I think it is. Or no, it's Ubisoft Paris. They've sold it within the last 6 months because of COVID. But now Assassin's Creed Valhalla has massive crunch hours yet again. And I exactly thought of Ubisoft, and I also thought of another massive... And these are massive game companies, mind you. Another one. Do you remember when Call of Duty was just about to come out? The new one, Warzone? Is it from Activision yet? I mean, that is a multi-billion-pound company. It's got to be at this point. And they still have stupid crunch hours, all subcontracted. And because they're all listed as 0-hour contracts, yes, they get paid, but they do not get paid overtime. At least it was the case, allegedly, with the Call of Duty aspect. And I assume it's a very similar thing with Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, a game journalist that I follow a lot on Twitter is Jason Schreier. And he has been a very vocal hater of the game devs who says, like 2077, it looked like okay, they're not going to crunch it now because they're going to postpone it for an extra few months. They're going to postpone it for an extra few months. When in actual fact, they've just been crunching the entire time. It might make the game better, but these people are literally suffering. And I don't know the exact conditions, but if they're not getting paid overtime, that's a joke.
Yeah, I get that, and that's what I'm saying is like what happens is you get guys going in out of university going like, I want to be a game developer. I've got all these cool ideas and these concepts that my lecturers have given me, and then what? 35, 40, you've been ground into a fine paste, and you never want to see game development ever again.
Yeah,
and then and then you end up with what I imagine happened a little bit in my life, where it's like, oh well, if you sign to us, you get the prestige of the company, and you get to work for product X, and you'll be able to tell people that you worked for product X. And then what really happens is you get in there, and there's probably a guy who's like just leaning out the window, like with a cigarette, just going like, "They'll kill you, kid."
Yeah, it is. It's. I mean,
yeah. There was a very I can't remember exactly who said it, but there was a good line from somebody I was listening to on a podcast years ago, who basically said that you either move into management or you move on.
Yeah,
and that's within 5 years of being in the games industry.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we try and avoid talking about real life situations, but that's like in general, surely. Like, I mean, I'm going through the exact same thing at work at the minute, and I'm sure other people have. Where when you are young, you're just out of university and you're kind of looking for a job. You're looking to make a name for yourself. If that's not with Company X because you know that the management prospects are crap or whatever, then you will move on to another one. You've got to. It almost feels like, I know some people do get stuck in the cycle, so it's a little bit different. But
I wonder how the crunch compares to. I know this is moving realms. But the FGC famously had an issue with King of the Fighters. Was it 13 or 14? I want to say 13. Which was developed by SNK Playmore, which is a Korean studio. And they literally sent someone downstairs one day, and they were like, right, we need to really get this game. We need to get all the maths engine really down. And they just got someone from security. They told him, go home and lock the door on your way out. And they locked them in the building.
I mean, COVID, I'd probably argue that they're all at home locked, and if they don't register the hours to get through the whatever they're doing at the minute, there's going to be issues. I suppose that might be a reason for the crunch. If not everyone can be in the office, maybe they've got to focus on that. I don't know, but I
was listening to an interview to do with Baldur's Gate, and the guy who's the head of that was saying one of the scenarios they found as a problem for development is because of COVID, they can't be in the office, and the development teams are actually trying to communicate, like we're communicating now via Discord, and sometimes it's people in different groups, and it's like, you've got to try and create these meeting times and these super meetings and all the other management joys and funs. And if you're saying it's all subcontracted out from what I've heard from some podcasts, like it's teams of people who are meant to be like working under a lead. I remember working in digital media, and I basically one day sat at my desk all day, and someone went, "Are you going to do nothing?" And it's like, no, I need to hear what's happened at the meeting in Leeds. I literally am sat on my hands until someone tells me to press some buttons and start creating whatever the clients requested. And they were like, well, can't you do something else in the meantime? I was like, yeah, sure. Have you got any other jobs for me? And they went through the jobs list and went, oh, the teams are full for jobs lists. And I was like,
yeah.
Then you're paying me then.
So moving back to Cyberpunk in particular, are we still going to buy Cyberpunk 2077?
I was never going to buy it in the first place, so I'm really moot in this conversation.
Fair enough.
For some reason, I never saw the appeal of it.
It's Keanu Reeves. I mean, for me,
fanboy, in he comes.
I will not buy it at the beginning. I'm a true game skeptic now. I mean, it's probably because I'm an adult and I have bills to pay as well now. But
and John now.
Yeah, I know that John will buy it first and give me his honest opinion.
Well, that's it. I was on board since the very first trailer that they did. They put out a trailer back before Witcher 3 came out, like years ago.
Wasn't it not the Keanu Reeves trailer?
No, it's way before that.
Oh no, I know the one you're on about now. It was like a world, like a sort of a Street View world thing.
No, it was a CG trailer for this concept that they had of a woman basically who was basically Ghost in the Shell-esque. She was more machine than person at this point, and she was just killing everybody. And I just thought, after everybody at that point in time was very fantasy based in their RPGs, and to see something that was very cyberpunk, very Akira, very in the future, Ghost in the Shell, all those things was like, yes, we need something like that right now. And 7 years later, here we are.
Here we are.
The trailer you're thinking of, Gareth, was actually at E3. It did have Keanu Reeves in it. It was the reveal right at the end.
Right at the end, yeah.
That was the one you were on about, yeah.
One of the issues I've got is Keanu Reeves just looks like...
an immortal being? Yes, I've heard.
No, Bionic Commando from Capcom.
Yes,
you know
you're
what?
right, actually.
Yeah.
All I can... And because I played so much Marvel vs. Capcom 3, all I can hear is like, here I come! Oh, you like this? And I'm just like, the Spencer Nightmare returns.
Is that what he's like then? He's
Bionic!
Oh god.
Yeah. Oh god, indeed.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that for you, I suppose that's a problem.
PTSD.
I'm still going to buy the game. It's an excuse for me to buy new PC gear, which has been on the cards for me for a couple of years now. So I'm going to be doing that, and I will give everybody my impressions when it comes out. Hopefully, assuming my new PC bits. I'm actually waiting for Black Friday before getting new PC stuff.
I'm going to do the same. Yeah.
I'm in a similar boat for some other things as well.
Yeah,
so.
I think everybody is at this point. Yeah. Everybody, if it's something expensive, you just go, well, it'd be cheaper at Black Friday.
So exactly, yeah. I bought anything.
I can't wait to buy last year's TV at a reduced price.
Yeah,
I already did that, thanks. I already got it. But I've just said the same, which is I bought every Christmas gift that does not contain batteries or have a power supply. It's just everything else can wait, basically.
Pretty much. So that's it for the news. We are going to move on to some...
I was actually just quickly with the news we mentioned. I shared something with the guys in our private Discord the other day, and I was actually surprised that John's not mentioned it, that Riot have revealed part of their multiple projects with The Ruined King, which is apparently going to be a turn-based RPG.
The reason I didn't include it in the news is because there was no news.
Yes, yeah.
I was more curious about your take because, my biggest concern was it was all what do they call all flash and all sizzle, but please show me some gameplay because
Riot?
I believe Riot. Well, Riot did a reveal just before COVID. It might have even just been pre-Christmas for some reason, I want to say. And they revealed they were like, oh, we're doing an FPS shooter game. I'm sure Dan can name that game.
Valorant.
They were like, we're making League of Legends mobile. We're making which is hilarious because the amount of times you see games describing themselves as League of Legends mobile whenever you go into the Google Play.
Don't forget though, just a very quick aside, not only did they announce League of Legends mobile, Apple also did a feature on it in the event. I don't know whether you've watched it. For the new iPhone 12, they're like, you can play League of Legends mobile on the iPhone 12. And probably several other phones as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can play it on our Samsung phone. I mean, Apple phone.
Yes.
Apple phone.
There's patents saying otherwise.
But they are doing a turn-based RPG, which is apparently Ruined King, which is apparently taking the lore of these games and actually trying to give it some context beyond reading a character bio. And they're doing a fighting game, which is called Project L. And there was a lot of things that I don't play League of Legends. I remember John trying to teach me, and I was like, I don't get this. I just don't get this. Whereas I understood Smite and I understood Paladins, and I was like, I found my lane, and I was happy with that.
What he's saying is basically the old man couldn't figure it out.
What he's saying is he needs to be behind the character as opposed to on top of them, because that is that what you've just described is the difference between League of.
Yeah.
Now.
I was going to say, either way Dan's described it, I thought he was going to say it was a legal problem more than a legal problem.
So back to this release trailer that they did. It's a CG trailer. I'm not really that interested in that. Riot have put a lot of time and money into their lore in the last few years to try and give people this urge to care about the product and to stick with it. I didn't care. I haven't stuck with it. And until they actually release some actual substance of a game mechanics, or just something in a trailer that isn't just a CG trailer, because I've seen hundreds of those. They've literally released like 100 CG trailers at this point for this game. I don't really care about those, and I see nothing different here. So
I think the CG trailer that we got over the weekend is, I think the characters are the cast available.
Yeah.
I think you interact obviously with the other 10 million champions that is in League these days.
It's like 150 something though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
speaking of turn-based RPGs,
well, the thing that worries me actually about this is that they made a release date for it, which was the cause of this CG trailer, which is early 2021. Yeah. So for them to make such a premonition of it going to be like early 2021, which means at the latest probably April. The game's made, but why not show us what it is?
It's all it's all tease, isn't it? They're trying to build the hype, because they did similar thing with Rune Terror, didn't they, Dan? Where they were like the Rune Terror stuff. They were kind of like there was like a lot of stuff to do with like, oh, check out these characters and this, that, and the other, and the interaction. But
that still shows the interaction. That's the important bit. So, as part of Legends of Runeterra,
not the interaction between the characters. I mean, not the interaction of the game.
Oh well.
And one of the trailers is it Misfortune is captured someone and he saves himself with a card, which is how they introduced it to being a card game. But in that trailer, they don't show you the card game, and then later on, they re-release the same trailer with card game feature and playing it.
See, I hate to just jump in and correct you, but that trailer was actually for the second expansion, which was released.
Is it for the second expansion?
Yeah, so that was a CG trailer, and that is typically exactly what they do for the expansions. They always release a CG trailer to introduce all the characters that are going to be in it. They've just done it again. However,
it's much nicer than Magic the Gathering's trailers.
Oh yeah. But they also just did it again.
Magic the Gathering literally just like they take the central image from a card art and then it just slides across its background. There's like next to no animation at all.
Yeah,
do that.
But just to finish off the Runeterra bit, what they did actually for this last release was they did an entire social aspect of it, and people voted for what cards they wanted to see, and then immediately after the vote, they released videos on the Facebook, on Twitter, showing, actually, these are the effects, because these are brand new effects. This is how it's going to impact your cards. Here's some sample cards that might work with it, which I thought was, it's a way to get newer players into the game and to get up to speed on the mechanics very quickly. But yeah, no, unfortunately, what you've referred to, CG, it's just, and John's already said it, they've got time and money. In fact, I think they have more animators than they do game designers, if I'm honest.
They do. Yeah.
To be fair, all the ideas that they have aren't necessarily an original concept. The fighting game looks quite good though, and one of the guys they've got in there on the development team is like, he's really well known for his engine development. I think it's using the Unreal Engine still, like a lot of fighting games do.
Yeah.
But he basically said like, here's a preview of some of the art and some of the stuff, and he's like, we understand like how the fighting game community works, and we need to make sure that when this comes out, like it comes out and it flies out.
If there's a single hitbox issue, that's it. You will know about. If there's a single hitbox issue, you will know about it.
Don't mention that. Don't mention that to me. I'm the wrong person to get into hurt boxes and hitboxes.
Oh, God. All right, well, swiftly moving on then. The news is done, and we are going to talk about some games. If nobody else minds, I'd like to start with a little story of a game that has been mentioned on this show before. It goes by the name of 13 Sentinels Aegis Rift.
Oh,
you may be
Aegis Rim.
Whoa. But John Aegis Rim got the name wrong. No! So back to John Aegis Rim.
You said John Rift. You said Rift, I'm afraid.
Oh, I've been watching Pacific Rim.
No.
Anyway,
it's Age's Rim.
Rift, then.
What?
You said Rim.
Okay, so
I'm
the
sorry,
game
I
is
forgot the word
13.
Rim. I was watching something else with the word Rim in it.
We're like an hour in. Can we start again?
Oh, apologies. So, go on, John.
Yeah. So in 13 Sentinels, I've now finished the game after 3 weeks with it, and I have to say,
can we just do that again? Can you say 13 Sentinels once more time?
13 Sentinels.
Dun dun dun. Continue.
Yeah, I think it might be the best visual novel I've ever played. I've played quite a few of them. To name a few: Valhalla, Fate's Day Night, Long Live the Queen, Doki Doki Literature Club. Some of those are very well known, some of them not. To go even further though, I think it might actually be the best story I've ever had in a game. That's more open to debate, obviously. But I'm struggling to find one that's made me feel like
Really?
this game makes me feel.
Interesting.
Scrape something across your cold, steel, emotionless heart, did it?
Yes, but I mean, it had a lot going in its favor. Like mechs are in it.
Yep.
A Japanese high school setting.
Cute girls, I believe, was the third
girls.
thing you described in the earlier podcast.
Yeah, they all go towards like this like emotional paste that keeps me interested and glued to the experience. So I enjoyed it very much. There was another thing that I did mention on the last episode, that the character Hijiyama-kun loves his Yakisoba Pan. And I believe I sent a picture to you guys of me with a bread bun and a Yakisoba
and some
kit.
Noodles. Was it actually a kit?
It was a kit. It actually said it was a kit. So let me give you a quick rundown of how that actually went. It didn't go quite to plan. Let's put it that way.
You surprised me.
What would have been great? I wish you'd have did like a mini video of you making, preparing, and eating said.
That's
delicacy.
a TikTok right there. Like, come on, get on the socials.
Well, let me get round to the details, and you'll understand how much I actually wish I had done that. So this kit that I had it including other things to make it into a yakisoba meal rather than this pan. So I'm like, I can't really do it that way. So what I did was I went on YouTube and saw a video of somebody making the actual yakisoba pan. The problem was the video that I watched had a fresh noodles solution that they put into a frying pan. And I didn't have that. I had dried noodles. So I boiled the noodles in a regular pan and then sieved them off on the side.
Please don't go where I think this is going, but I'm listening.
So I then had this frying pan with oil in it, and I hadn't quite got rid of all the water that was on the noodles, and I almost poured all the noodles into the pan, and I am glad I didn't, because it wasn't dry. The noodles weren't dry, so some of the water went into the pan. It splashed the oil over onto the hob and erupted into a fireball. Now at this point, my wife and daughter had been out on a walk, and they chose that moment to come back into the house. And my wife started screaming, "Where's the fire extinguisher? Where's the fire extinguisher?" My daughter ran away and out of the house again. It took a couple of minutes to go find her, because I think she was running towards her grandmother's house. At which point, back to me, I had this fireball eruption in my face. I actually kept my cool pretty well. I'm quite happy with I'm not happy with how any of this went, but I managed to keep my cool, because I dropped the noodles with my right hand, turned the hob off, And then I've got like quite a large space in the middle of my kitchen, so I jumped backwards with this fireball still in my hand. I had hair gel on, by the way, so if it had gone anywhere near my hair, like I would have lost all my hair. I would have had to go to hospital or something.
Is it wrong that in part of my head, John has got the wet noodles in one hand, he's ignored the pan, but he's got the bun, he just goes... slams it straight into the
He's still got the noodles left. He's still got the noodles left. We might get to that bit.
So I jumped backwards and dropped the pan on the floor, which was still on fire at this point. Okay? I dropped the pan in the middle of the floor, turned the hob off, and went to go get a towel to try and cover the pan. But before I could get back, it had all gone out. Everything was fine at that point. Well, everything wasn't fine. Everything was like burnt.
On fire and dying, yeah.
No,
I once had a similar experience, hence why I knew where this was going. And literally the water hit the fat, and my sister was like, "Oh my god, there's a fireball!" I went, "Oh yeah," and just shook the pan gently, and it just put it out. And my sister cacked herself, and I was like, "Yep, bro."
So yeah, I didn't understand that would happen. So I no longer have a need to understand Yakisoba Pan at this point.
Yeah, no.
I think I've gotten over that.
I mean, your eyebrows look great still as well.
But yes, in the non-fire related terms, I love everything about 13 Sentinels. And
what about Yakisoba Pan? You still had noodles and still had a bun, as well as a PTSD moment.
I made a grilled cheese sandwich instead.
Okay,
which is a solid choice, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But yes, if anyone has any doubts as to whether or not to pick up 13 Sentinels, I strongly urge you, if you like any of the things that I've just described, please do so. The game needs all the help it can get. It hasn't sold particularly well, but it's a very strong game. And that's pretty much all I want to talk about.
Well, is it a strong game or is it a strong story?
All right, it's a strong story.
There we go.
Yeah,
because
let's just go on.
All I'm gonna say is like I listened to some guys streaming the game because we've been praising its localization, and a gentleman I was listening to actually said there is an issue with the localization, I believe.
Well, you see, the problem is I played the game in Japanese with subtitles.
Yeah.
As everyone should do when listening to a Japanese game that has that option, because subs are better than dubs, in my opinion.
Oh, that's going to start a fight, I'm telling you.
Well, if anyone views and comments or anything like that, then maybe it will. I don't know. But I was going to say, I believe they changed, possibly even in the dub, that one of the characters, and I don't know the name, but in our version, they are non-binary. Like,
you mean Okina? In the Japanese, he's dressed as a woman, so they just call him. They just refer to him as him, but he's cross-dressing.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to say. Is in the localization in Japan, it is someone who cross-dresses, but apparently in the localization for us, they are referred to as non-binary.
Oh right,
that's interesting. Yeah,
which is like it's a subtle tweak, but it's clearly towards the audience and
Well, I mean, just to quickly touch on that, Hijiyama-kun, the guy who talks about his Yakisoba Pan, is actually attracted to Okina because in the era that he's from, the 1940s, Okina presents as he's undercover essentially and dresses as a girl. To get where he needs to go and to do what he needs to do. And Hijiyama-kun is actually attracted to her, and they shift forward, and he's immediately confused because he's from the 1940s, but finds out that this guy is a guy, and he's confused. Yeah. And they actually deal with it in a particularly realistic way. They don't just pass it off as, "Oh, you're weird." It's like, I have conflicting feelings. I'm still attracted to this person, but in where I'm from, that's an issue, which to me sounds like a very realistic way of doing it. I'm actually very pleased with how that came out.
I think there's a lot of stuff where it's like trying to reflect the societal change to a lot of things that had been previously pushed under the floorboards, pushed aside, ignored, and in some cases, frankly, just trampled on. Yeah, and I think it's good storytelling, and I think it's more true to the human experience that there's a lot of people who probably do have feelings and opinions that they don't know and understand, that are new and or confusing, that occur to them, especially in your formative years. And even as an adult, some stuff happens. And, dealing with those things can be difficult. And I think that from what I've heard, they deal with some of the story beats really well.
Yeah, they do.
But I was just curious as to, because I know that you're a subs man.
Yeah, that's exactly how it played out. I had no idea they changed that.
Yeah.
Not so sure on that wording, but okay.
Yeah. But yeah, 13 Sentinels, go buy it, please. Dan, did you want to take over the next section, please?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So I forgot that you actually were going to bring up 13 Sentinels, because I was going to refer from Garrett's news segue about turn-based RPGs to another turn-based RPG. A turn-based RPG with roguelike elements, Gordian Quest.
Yeah.
And I know you've played it, John. You played all of Act 1, I think.
And a little bit of Act 2.
Yeah, good. So, Gordian Quest is from I believe it is a Singaporean company called Singaporean game developer called Mixed Realms, and I'm actually going to check that now. It is indeed, yeah. And they have a VR game as well that apparently they're more well known for, but not in my eyes now. Like, I really like Gordian Quest.
I feel that Gordian Quest is a game that I remember seeing the trailer for, and it looked like Fire Emblem meets Slay the Spire.
Yes, I could see why you've made that
visuals.
Yeah. It's like it's a very old school RPG element of it, with a turn-based thing with a card or
building element to it.
Yeah, it's a deck building element, but it's not like you used to. Basically, it's not one deck; it's one deck per character.
Yeah,
although
you have a squad.
Saying that, though, as part of the introduction, and by the way, there is 4 acts total, or there will be 4 acts total. It's in early access right now. Act 1 is the introduction, which John did, and then a little bit of Act 2, and you said you felt a little bit overpowered, but then it all resets.
Yeah, it all resets in between acts. We should probably point out that the game is on Steam at the moment and Switch, I think.
Yes. Is it actually on Switch? I think it's coming to Switch. I'm not sure whether it's on Switch.
I'm pretty sure it's been announced. I'm not sure if it's there yet. But
checking.
But yes, there are 2 acts available right now. I got all the way through Act 1. I think of this game as basically Slay the Spire, but with emphasis on the characters that you control and less emphasis on the enemies that you fight. Yep. Because it seems like they've put a lot of time and effort into coming up with these different characters that are boilerplate RPG. There is a cleric, a bard, a rogue, a swordsman, a wizard, and the like. I think there's 2 more characters.
Classic D&D groups.
Exactly. I think that's right. But there's lots to like about this game, but I kind of feel like they put all their effort into making those characters likable and interesting and deep to build with the deck building elements, and then you have the enemies that are just, they have like 1 or 2 abilities each, and their meaning of difficulty is basically that the enemies have more HP and they throw more of them at you, which it just, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you've played Act 1, so Act 1 is listed as an introduction, and you played Act 1 in the exact same way I did it in terms of the characters, but more importantly, Act 1 follows only a semi-random pattern. It follows pretty much the same thing, and then there's a time element right at the end, which you'll know, obviously. Right. You've got a limited time to be able to complete Act 1, and it's designed to stop you from staying there and then getting all of your classes leveled up. However...
Did you do it before the timer ran out?
No.
No, I didn't either.
No, I didn't.
The antagonist got his main max power or something, and then the counter just stops.
Yeah, the counter just stops so you can continue on.
Yeah.
But by the time of that, I'd gotten a little bit, not bored necessarily, but I was like, right, I've done what I can, let's go and fight the bots. But Act 2 onwards, so Act 2, 3 and 4, which each have different elements and things like that. They're all procedurally generated, and they all have a different, unique element to it. So, Act 2. So basically, I have now 21 hours in this game. And bearing in mind, it cost me £13, and 21 hours. I've not finished Act 2 yet, although I'm getting close, very close. And there's still 2 more acts to go. That's probably worth it in my eyes.
Do you feel like the enemies are more interesting in Act 2 than they are in Act 1?
So, Act 1 is very introductory. In Act 2, you get things like, for instance, there is a lot more abilities. It's not just hit or defend. They can curse you. They can. There's vampires that can literally heal themselves off you. They can lay traps, and there's certain ones that have line abilities as well, exactly the same as you do. Act 2 still doesn't have impossible enemies. It's rare that any character dies, and I've never had a party wipe ever. However, I'm getting, and this is what made me laugh a little bit. You said yourself, you felt a little bit overpowered.
Yeah.
I felt like that until I booted it up on Saturday, right? And then I was like, right, okay, I'll do this random, and then I'll do this encounter. And then my next encounter was 2 levels higher than I was, and I went, whoa, where did you come from? Like, I've still got to do this. Now, that isn't necessarily a negative thing, because it means that the game is either scaling with you, I'm not sure. I assume because it's procedurally generated, it is, in some form. But also, I'm up to level... I'm 27... I'm in 26, level 26 now. And that encounter was 28. So, it genuinely felt, and I didn't do it because I know that the scaling does matter, because the enemies do, they do increase and things like that, and like, no matter how good your rogue is, if there's 4 enemies that have a big health pool, he still needs 4 turns to one-shot kill them all. It does happen though. But I mean,
I would hope that Act 2 is better, like, because if it were me designing a game, I would say, put all your effort into these characters that are going to stay more or less the same over the 4 acts, and then put effort into making your enemies more interesting after that. And since this is an early access game, that's possibly what happened. I mean,
well, yes and no. So Act 2 came out mid-August, I think it was. So
July 30th.
Was it July 30th? Okay. Well, there you go then. I knew it was some point at the start of August. However, we got an extra character in the Bard, because the Bard wasn't on the original release. I'm trying to think. I think there's 8 characters now, or there's 7 characters now. But they said that there's going to be another 9.
Okay. Wow.
So
okay.
It's going to be like a D&D party. In essence, is what I see. I mean, right now they've got Druid, Rogue, or the Scoundrel they call him, the Fighter, the Cleric, the Ranger, the Wizard, the Bard, and is that all? I think it is all.
Did you say Cleric?
Yeah, I did say Cleric. Yeah,
said Cleric.
That's it then.
Are you missing the Sorcerer class?
Well, I mean, it's got a Wizard, but it's not pulling directly from D&D, because there's no Warlock or anything. That could be quite an interesting mechanic. However, the Bard we've discussed we don't like. If they focus on these characters and they can balance them, because again, and this is really me, eating my own words, it is an early access game, and I went in there with a 15% discount that's currently on it, knowing that, because a streamer that I watch, Northern Lion, actually did a sponsored stream, and I was like, this sponsored stream has worked. It's exactly what I want. I mean, I craved D&D at the time, so I could put the hours in. But they need to. I don't know what Act 3 will be like. Act 2 had an interesting element. Are you going to continue playing it, John?
No, because as we'll come to discuss later on, I bought Hades as well.
Yes,
and that is exceptional. So we'll have to see. I probably might. That's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, probably might. Well, basically,
I don't know.
Indecisively indecisive.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed in Act 1. It started strong. I would imagine I obviously only did one build of each character. One of the good things I've seen is that each character can be built differently depending on what you want. I don't know how balanced that is. My characters became very overpowered early on with the way that I built them. I might have just come across a lucky set of decks that I built that made them very, very strong, and others probably won't be. But hearing you say that Act 2 is actually a lot better is very encouraging.
Yeah. I should point out, the overpoweredness doesn't go away. My rogue can still hit for 140 in a turn. However,
the reason
some of the people only have 140 health. Some of them have more. Some of the enemies, that is. So it does get better. And I've spent 20 hours in it, and I spent £13.79 or whatever it was. So I'm not upset at the minute. If 2 more acts come out and they're the same as Act 2, I'll be happy. If they get better, it's well worth it.
See, I have a couple of questions because I've not played this. So, with with John saying about the enemy NPCs need to be more varied because they seem like bad guys just for the sake of bad guys. So the whole point of this game is that you've got these classes, this group going through. It's a war-torn world, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's very standard
D&D,
Fire Emblem, Shining Force, kind of. Yeah.
Hang on, I've got it here. Humans follow on from an ancient race called the Vanai, a bunch of wizards who dabbled with things beyond their control. Then the gods stepped in and seemingly banished them, leaving man to deal with the mess they created. And that's
John, are you one of the Vanai, someone who dabbled in something that he should not have tried to create, aka a Yakisoba Pan?
Reference. Let's call back.
Yeah,
but surely for me, and as you've pointed out multiple times, a good narrative should come from your party and the experiences that they have. So I was kind of curious when you went, actually, what they need to do is make the enemies better. And it's like, surely the engagement should be from the party that you're playing as, not the foes that you vanquish. Although, obviously, like, an intriguing, use Fire Emblem, again, as my own reference, is like, you'll fight a bunch of generic NPCs, but they'll have a sergeant, a bandit captain, or someone who's got a character name and their own portrait rather than, here's generic Bandit 2.
So my argument for that is that not all games need a story. So a game that I've spoken about a few times is Slay the Spire, which has very little story to do with it at all. It's all about mechanics. And I feel like this game could be something quite similar. And it's just if it's going to be that standard or that generic, don't have a story.
Right.
From my perspective, I can say it has. It doesn't have a beat you over the head with its story. As John will have said, there is a story element there, and in the introductory part, there's a countdown, and I was like, "Oh, I've got to make sure I'm completing these quests, but also get back for the countdown," and I didn't, and then it just kind of went. Don't worry about it. You might as well consider it.
False countdown because there's lots of games that just use that to try and increase to build an element of pressure.
That's exactly
one of the scenarios I was going to mention is like if the chapter 2 onwards, Act 2 or however they're calling it onwards is procedurally generated but based around an element, having a narrative around a party is going to be difficult anyway. Because
I suppose they're maybe trying to play to their strengths because in the first act. Your characters rarely speak, and they never have anything interesting to say. Yeah. Like I had the scoundrel in my team, and you would imagine that a scoundrel would be more scandalous, let's say, in what he said, and he just didn't.
Yeah,
it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
So you feel like they've leaned into an element of gameplay / storytelling that maybe they need not do. Like they could have just told you that this world exists, and then here you go.
I don't know how big Mixed Realms is as a studio, but there are a lot of elements going on in this game. There's a lot to balance and a lot to do. If they have so much to do and so many good things that are happening with the deck itself and the building of the actual characters, I kind of feel like they should have not bothered with the weakest element of it. So, the weakest element of the story just drags it down.
So Square Enix a few years ago released they published a game by a company that I've just looked up called Cardboard Utopia, and it's called Children of the Zodiac. And that is you've played it briefly at my house, John. And
I do remember that. Yeah.
It is a game which is pseudo Vandal Hearts / Final Fantasy Tactics, and your characters, as they level up, they generate both cards for their deck and also dice, because it has a dice rolling mechanic. And that leans more into its narrative. And sometimes the issue you've got with that game is realistically, you've only got a party of 3, only one, and it's a sort of a very mixed bag party. No one's really. They've sort of tried to mesh together some of like the classic ideas. So your main character is a thief, but she's also the healer. You've got a guy who's long ranged. There's also friendly fire in the game as well. So like Pester, who is the guy with the gun, he has an attack, which the name escapes me, but he basically like shoots wildly in an arc, and if someone's in the arc that's in your party, he'll shoot them. And that lent very heavily into its storytelling and its level development. And that's when you were saying
interchangeable though.
No, you have those 3 characters. There is a frustrating section. You do actually later on. There is because they're like a family of orphans, and the guy who's the head, I think, is called Zerkov. You can play as him and another member of the family later on in like a couple of side missions. And that game at times does like bad level design in the fact that it's like, to make this level harder, all we're going to do is either throw more enemies at you, or we're going to really up their damage output or their health pool, rather than actually do anything.
I made that argument about this game in particular. I can't remember.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is like, there's points that you'd made where there's obviously they both have a similar design drop.
Yeah, the difference is though that Gordian Quest allows you to change your characters at will.
Yeah.
So making a story element about a set of characters that isn't set, I would imagine, is very difficult. So you can't have them say anything in particular, because then they're just increasing their workload to an unimaginable length. I just feel like
games like Fire Emblem that have like groups of over 100 characters and characters.
But you always have a central character though. You always have a central character in that. You don't in this.
Yeah, and you also have to point out, I mean, again, we are comparing Mixed Realms to Nintendo at the end of the day.
Exactly.
They physically don't have. If they don't have,
to be fair, I was comparing them originally to a sub-studio Square Enix called Cardboard Utopia.
Still part of Square Enix is my point. Mixed Realm is an independent platform.
But Square Enix was just the publisher in the event.
Right. Okay. So they wouldn't have funneled any money or resources into it. Okay,
saying, but maybe Mixed Realm should have learned from that particular instance. Then,
yeah, I mean,
I just feel like the game would benefit from not actually having a story.
Yeah, I think, or at least not the story that he's presenting. I 100% agree. I like the idea of it being, you have to adjust your party and build their decks, because, and this is the only difference to what John said, is you can swap them at will. But if you swap in, if you're about, you're level 21 on, your main 3 characters, and then you realise, I've not gone healer, when you try and put that healer in, that healer isn't level 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of an issue. It kind of locks you in immediately.
Yeah.
I like to call that the Fire Emblem permadeath situation, where it's like, this is my group, and then you make a mistake, especially in the earlier games, and it's like, oh, they're dead, and then you're trying to like hide a healer just at the right distance to still be like useful.
It's funny you should mention something like that. Actually, I recently came across. Are either of you aware of the Nuzlocke games?
Yes.
Which like Pokemon subsidiary, like self-imposed rules.
Yeah.
I only just came across them, and
Dan's mentioned it during D&D like several months ago. One of the guys that he's friends with streamed exclusively like Nuzlocke teams and stuff.
Don't listen to Dan. Come on.
This is the reason why we put a podcast on it, so that other people would listen to me instead. But yeah, I mean,
me and John are actually just talking to each other. We don't really reference Dan at all.
Who? But yeah, you mentioning like characters dying and stuff like that's exactly what the Nuzlocke thing is all about, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I really want to do that. I've never done that in a Pokemon game. I always end up stuttering out halfway through the Pokemon games because they get boring.
I totally have the same experience.
The Nuzlocke kind of thing seems like it could actually make that not be a problem for me.
Having so many rules. Die. Yeah.
So permadeath is a thing in Pokemon games if you self-impose it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which sounds great.
I mean, Nuzlocke basically have loads of different things. I mean, there's versions of Nuzlocke where you can't heal. There's versions of Nuzlocke where if you run it off an emulator, you have to randomize the first Pokemon that you get.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, and the reason why I brought it up so many months ago, was because the person I was watching did this randomized and then did a vote amongst the Twitch viewers about which Pokemon he should get, and he should know straight away he should never do that because he ended up with Delibird that knows one move, which is called Gift, and it either inflicts damage on a person or heals them. So in
the card game, Delibird has the same thing, and you toss a coin, and if your opponent calls it right, they draw a card. If they call it wrong, you draw a card.
Yeah. So
they could have got Ditto.
Yeah, transform.
Ditto's amazing in the card game.
Ditto's also would be good in the in the Nuzlocke, but
VGC.
But yeah, I mean, so Gordian Quest, I would rate it right now. I'd rate it a 7 out of 10. And that's mainly That's mainly the mechanics and how much I'm actually enjoying it, like a D&D. If the remaining, I've not reached the end of Act 2. Just to preface this, if end of Act 2 has this story hook that then says all your other characters have died except these 3. Okay, I may be hooked into it, maybe I've got to find a way to revive them. Maybe that's my purpose. If it just continues on like this, it'll stay as a 7 out of 10. No matter what mechanics they throw at me, it's just adding on top of it,
Yeah, I'd say about the same. The game mechanics are very strong. I just feel that the other elements just kind of sort of drag it down, unfortunately.
Yeah. Should we talk about a game that's a 9 out of 10 for me?
I think it might be a 10 out of 10 for me.
Really? I don't know because I've not beat the second boss yet.
John's voice, as he said, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. But it was very creepy and slightly. Yeah. It wasn't even that. Oh no, that's definitely the kind of question that voice sounds like it asks a lot.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Hades. So I bought Hades on Saturday, and
He's never left the house since.
I have, but only for brief periods of time where withdrawal was a problem. I've played like 22 runs now of Hades. I've completed it once, and I think we've already talked about Slay the Spire tonight, but I think it might actually be a Slay the Spire killer for me. So I've put 300 hours into Slay the Spire, maybe 500, depending on, because I played some of the beta in Slay the Spire as well, which obviously doesn't include on the time spent on Steam. So I've played a lot of that game, and I love it. But this game is, I almost can't say it. It's better than Slay the Spire. It's different because it's not a deck building game, but. It's not a deck building game, but there are very similar elements to it. So Hades is it's actually on sale on Switch and Steam right now. So if you haven't got it and you fancy something, definitely go and get it.
What's the sale on Switch? I've bought it once, but I might buy it again.
It's £18 on Switch.
Oh no, never mind. Considering what I paid for it on the Epic Game Store, no thanks.
Yeah. Please explain how you got that.
Well, it basically right now I believe it still is. It is on offer on the Epic Game Store, and because I made a previous purchase on the Epic Game Store, I had a £10 coupon. So in essence, for me, it cost me £5.19, which for the game I've now spent 6 hours in and will be spending more in.
Yeah,
100% worth it.
Mm-hmm. So Hades is developed and published by Supergiant Games. And it's their 4th game, following on from Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, and now this. It was actually an early adopter on the Epic Store, which is why it's on there now on sale. It was first released on 2019 in early access, and went 1.0 early on this year. And yeah, Hades is, to get to actually what it is, it's a dungeon crawling action game. Much like Transistor and Bastion were, and it's a roguelike, which I can't actually remember what Bastion's like. It's been that long,
Bastion, this is where I was going to say is like the other day I did a comparative of someone who does the opening 15 minutes of a game, and he does it without any conversation or anything. He just puts the game in, records, loads it up onto YouTube. And there's a lot of similarities between Bastion and Hades that I could spot just as a viewer, as not someone who played the game.
I seem to remember Bastion is a story game. It's not.
So it's much more of a role playing game. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more RPG based.
Hades is definitely different than that because each level, each run, plays out differently. But in Hades, you are the son of Hades, the god of Greek mythology. You are called Zagreus, which I'm not sure if it's actually part of mythology or they just made it up for the.
I believe Zagreus is made up. Like everything else in it is legit. I'm just going to check now.
Yeah, it's actually it plays off my very loose knowledge from watching Hercules as a child. In both the series and the Disney and everything.
I'm so glad that we're basing your Greek mythology on such a strong standing.
Movies and TV. That's exactly where it comes from.
This is why it depends on how we want to get into this. And I don't want to spoil. In fact, basically, one of the potential Greek myths is that he is Hades' son. One is that he is a son of another god couple.
Would
basically.
It be Zeus because his name is basically the first letter and the last three letters spell Zeus?
Yes, you are correct. So he's either in some stories he's the son of Zeus and Persephone.
Mm-hmm.
And in some, he is the Hades' son.
Greek mythology is always. I'm going to use the term. I was going to say hilarious, and I didn't mean to. It's always interesting.
It is.
The reason that it's always interesting, and I almost use the term hilarious, is the telling of the story changes from region to region. Because basically, what happened is there were stories that were told, and they were meant to be morality stories. And they were meant to be stories for like scare kids.
Are you going to go to the Zeus story where he turns into a swan and basically makes a woman pregnant?
Name a time that it doesn't. So it's like Medusa was raped by Zeus. He raped Medusa in the temple of Athena. Athena got angry and thus cursed Medusa to become the Gorgon. Athena.
There's no N there.
Athena, sorry. And then she later on, still angry at the sacrilege of her temple, sent Perseus on part of his quest to kill her, claiming that the only way to overcome another trial was to use her head. But the stories change from like region to region, and there's also some overlap with the claim that the Egyptian gods are actually the Greek gods in masks. And there's one of the stories where one of the trials of Hercules is that he has to kill a stag, a Celtic stag. So he basically goes to Scotland to kill a stag.
On holiday?
Yeah, he got a great booking agent.
He travels like 1,200 miles just to kill a stag.
I mean, he had the Pegasus at that point, so...
Yeah.
Oh, right, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
I was still thinking of like Virgin Airways, but hey, whatever. Anyway, back to Hades. So you're the son of Hades, and you wish to leave the underworld for reasons that you will learn later. But your father doesn't wish you to. So very believably, like any old son, you think you know better than your dad, and you're going to do it anyway. So
this sounds really familiar to me after this weekend.
Yeah, I bet it does. You set off to escape, and only to find that most of the underworld doesn't really like you very much and wishes to kill you with pointy things. So you kill them instead, and with a variety of weapons and abilities. So these abilities and weapons are why I compare the game to Slay the Spire, because each time you go into a room and defeat all the enemies within it, you get the choice to between three different boons or abilities, things that change your weapons and the way they work, either the way that you move about or utility things, or the boons, as I mentioned. These are
Crown Trick. When you enter the treasure rooms, you get very similar kind of mechanic in that as well.
Yeah, and these work very similar to a deck, shall we say, in a lot like a lot of the other games we've been talking about tonight. Mm-hmm. But
I'll get you into TCGs yet.
No. I'm all virtual, baby. No physical. 2D for real.
I feel so sorry for your wife.
Anyway, back to Hades again. So the boons. The boons are given to you as gifts from the gods. And you can do different things with these. You get a choice of 3. And you find out that they are your extended family. And they also wish for you to leave.
Because they all refer to you, like especially Hermes and Dionysus. Cuz, you're right, cuz. Come on, overly familiar.
I'm not sure whether it's pretty obvious, but for a slight spoiler, I think most of them wish for you to just annoy the heck out of Hades at this point. They just want to see him get mad and angry because nobody likes Hades and Hades hates everybody.
Hades hates himself.
Even the people in his own house.
Yeah, Hades hates himself, yeah.
And like I said, I've put 22 runs into the game and I've won once. So the game is not easy. I enjoy the challenge though. There have been specific like points where I have come across a boss that has kept me at bay, but each time that I go back, I get slightly better. And it's not one of those games that you just come across like a barrier that seems cheap. It's like, okay, this is a new set of mechanics that each boss has, and I have to overcome them by getting used to it and doing something slightly different. I won't spoil what some of the actual bosses are, but it doesn't. Every time I've lost, it's not because the games have been cheap.
Yeah.
I might have thought that at the time because I'm like, oh my god, why have I died to this thing that?
And then later on, you have that epiphany of, no, it's me.
It's not me. It's
I'm the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Because the first boss actually held me off for like 3 or 4 runs, and now I don't even take any damage from this boss. Like I just get past it. It's just like, yep, sorry, out of the way, you. I'm moving up. Like the game seems very fair.
I have got one issue with that statement.
Okay, please.
That first boss you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Which boss is it? What's the name? If you don't mind.
Well, I wasn't going to go into spoilers because it does change.
Well, that is exactly what has hit me out of left field. So after a certain number of runs, it does change. You get into this.
Yep.
You're like, I know exactly where to go. I know where to dodge this. And you're thinking, my issue is not with this first boss. My issue is with the second boss. And then I went in and I went, what? The what? What's this?
So. Another thing that some people have actually I've spoken to about the game that have been with the game since it came out on the Epic Store in 2018. There are lots of those. There are many things that are different, and I look forward to seeing all of them. Like there are little things that change. I've beaten the game, but there's lots still to do. Like the ending that I got isn't the ending, and apparently that there's lots still to do. Which is fantastic news for a guy who wants to play more of this game.
Yeah.
Like there is many more reasons to keep going back to it. Sorry, go on, Gav.
I was going to say that's a great thing to hear as a gamer because one of the most painful things, and I'm going to mention Fire Emblem for the 50th time tonight. One of the things that's really painful with that is you can unlock in all of those games. You can unlock the big boss characters like the final boss and stuff. Or like NPCs are important, but to do it, you've got to play the whole game 3 times, 4 times, 15 times, 25 times, and it's a 30-hour game.
Yeah, and you're doing it for one scene, aren't you?
And and you're doing it just to get basically like someone in a class that you already have.
Yeah.
But in a different color, basically.
Whereas
in Hades,
a run can take you anywhere between like 20 minutes if you struggle, or I think when I won, I was playing the game for 50 minutes, I think, something along those lines. It's not something that will eclipse like an entire week, is what I'm saying. You can do multiple runs in a night, but the width and breadth of the different things that are on offer. I mean, like like Dan said, like he came to the first boss thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and then it threw something out of left field, and you're like, "Oh no."
It was more like, "Oh no, and I'm dead." That's the thing, roughly how it went.
I was watching someone, and he was going through streamers of Hades, and he come across some random guy, and the guy was in wherever it is you can like look at your items, and he was like, this guy has really played it. He's like, he must have done it like 50, 60 runs and completed it 50, 60 times, because he's got like absolute unreal items. And
so sorry, go on. I'll say something in a second.
I've finished.
Okay. So yes, that is one of the other things I want to bring up, is that if you are struggling in the game, like I definitely have, there are certain aspects that allow you to get stronger from the beginning of your run. You collect currency that you can bring back with you, and you use that to get stronger in certain elements. And it doesn't feel that overpowered. It doesn't feel quite like easy mode. So one of the main things that you want to get is Death Defiances. Now, what Death Defiances is, when you get to 0 health, you get half of it back, and you carry on. Now, you get the first one of these for 30 currency, which isn't a lot. The next one, if you want another one, is 500 currency, which took me like another 10 runs to actually accrue that.
I'm currently on 350. I'm still going.
Yeah. The next one, I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, is 1,000, and you cannot have any more after that. So your continues, let's call them, you get 3 of them, and if you can't do it at that point, then
I've got one thing for you then, John.
What's that?
So, you know the not the boon, is it? What is it? The thing you can attach at the start of each run that's in the little cage thing, the gifts. You know the gifts?
Yeah.
Have you tried giving? These are slight spoilers, by the way. I cannot stress this enough. There is slight spoilers for an extra Death Defiance here, so just get some nectar, and you know the skeleton who you train with.
Skelly.
Give it to him.
Okay. So yeah, obviously maybe there are more ways.
There's so like, and you've been playing it for how many runs? And you like, I just found it by accident because I went, oh, I didn't realize I could give it to him. Press G to gift, and he gave me some an item. But yeah.
So that brings us on to like the characters themselves, like which is the thing that makes this game so, I wouldn't say unique, but so brilliant, is that all the characters, like the things that come out of left field for you when on the bosses, the characters have lots to say. Like, of course, these are Greek mythology characters. There is lots of history with them, and they play to each of their like characteristics, which means that there's a lot of history there and a lot of things that they can say. And they do. Like I've played the game for probably about 20 hours or so. Like, I'm still coming across new things that each of the characters has to say.
Yeah.
So how much more can I sing its praises? It's a brilliant game. I'm loving it, and I want to play a lot of it. I want to play right now.
And one day, John will complete it with anything but the bow.
Apparently, one of the runs you're meant to do is bow only, and someone was saying it's like so hard, so ridiculously hard to do bow only.
No, bow is the easiest one, in my opinion.
Do you mean with no boons or any trinkets or anything?
I think it's just bow only.
Oh, okay, then very difficult. Then never mind. Ignore me.
I can imagine that being very difficult. The reason that the bow is good is because you can play keep away. Like, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Zoning is a thing.
Yeah. The problem that the bow has when you get past where Dan is up to is damage. Your damage dealing ability it drops off. Yeah.
I've had this conversation with my son when he used to talk a lot about Fortnite, and I tried to explain to him like how the balance of the guns in the game. It's like, if it fires really fast, it probably does really low damage and doesn't fire very far. If it fires really far, it might do high damage, but it takes really long, trying to explain to him like how balancing in games works.
Yeah. I mean...
Sorry, go on, Dan.
We all were jumping in there. You first, John.
All right. Well, that's kind of what the game forces you to try and do, though. So another thing that makes me think of Slay the Spire is you're trying to garner these abilities together. You get choices for each one, and you're trying to gather the best ones that fit together into an overpowered unit that you become. It's That's why I think of it as a deck building game, because you're doing exactly the same thing as you would in those games. It's just that the spit and polish that they put over the top of it looks a bit different.
Yeah.
But it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I was just about to make that exact same comment. Like, it's really important to note, like, because I actually managed to do a run of the first boss and a bit with the spear, because the spear also has a similar mechanic, and I was looking at it thinking that's pretty cool, but then I went to the bow, and the first run just seemed really overpowered to me. I got to the second boss basically because of the boons. This is real, and then you can level them up with the poms.
Yeah.
And when you level up the boons, they just get better. Not massively better all the time, but increasing duration or something like that is key.
Yeah, I've noticed that the poms, the first upgrade to each one of them is quite good, and then the more that you stack on top of it, the less
effective.
It's less effective. Yes. I think that's just a balancing act.
Yeah, they had to do it. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that's what I was sort of trying to say is like, there's going to have to be some fall off somewhere in the weapons. Like Crown Trick has it in a similar way. Like the guns seem really good, but then they've got a reload mechanic, which, it depends on how you preference to play. Like I said last time, I favour the axe just because it's like a big swingy attack. I believe in Hades you've got like a dodge maneuver, so like you can use the sword quite effectively, and eventually you probably are going to end up. It's like, do you put all your eggs in one basket, or do you multitask?
More, do you crit or do you damage over time?
Yeah. That's literally what the choice for the bow it is.
Yeah. But no, I was also like referencing Slay the Spire as well. So it's like, are you just building it up to be super lopsided in this thing and hope that nothing ever goes the other way, or are you actually trying to create a balancing act?
That's probably a difference that I have noticed. I'm not sure. Slay the Spire definitely will give you difficult enemies if you have built a certain way. Like if you have like a card that does like bludgeon, for say, does 40 damage to one target, it will then send multiple waves of things at you at the same time to try and make it difficult for you. I can't say that I've noticed Hades doing something like that. But then you come across the differences in the actual game mechanics, because obviously Slay the Spire, you have an energy-based, turn-based system, whereas Hades is obviously an action game and doesn't really fall into that category.
Because I know, having watched like the first 15 minutes of Bastion, like they used the narrator very strongly to build the world and the themes and to give some of the setting and precedence. You meet characters, weirdly enough, in Bastion, even though you're the only person left in the world. And then frequently, once you meet that character, it's like the ghost of that character. I think you do eventually meet characters that are alive, and you end up being able to do trades and build weapons and stuff like that. I can't quite remember. I'm sure if
it's been a while.
But like when I was watching Bastion and Hades, it just made me think, like, because Transistor's not too different from those games either. It's like a super giant game just found a niche that's super comfortable for them, and they're just really experimenting with the means of storytelling. So in Bastion, your character doesn't speak, but the narrator really, and the narrator from that game's great.
It's funny you should mention that. He's actually in this game as well. The voice actor is, not the actual character. But yeah, it's funny you should say that. Like Bastion and Transistor aren't too different from this. I actually don't particularly like those games.
Yeah,
I like Pyre. I like their third game, which is a very different, almost a sports game with story elements in.
Yeah.
I really like the characters in that game.
Is it also because you're escaping technically from hell as well in that one?
You know what? I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that is true. That is very similar.
This is why I was saying it's like, do you get the feeling super giant games have just gone, this is my thing, and this is how I do it, and I'm just going to get better and better and better at it, with the exception of Transistor, where I wasn't very good at it after I made Bastion, but I tried something different.
Well, it's weird. I actually had a Twitter conversation with Greg Kasavin, who's the writer on the Supergiant games. And he was the writer on Pyre and this game as well. And I actually said to him, I said, look, I've not really, if I'm being honest, liked Transistor and Bastion. The thing that I liked about Pyre was how strong the characters were. And he came back to me and went, thanks. I wrote those characters. And I sort of think it's somewhere in an office, he's sort of like, yes, I was right to do that.
Because before did, a thing there was a thing with Nintendo Switch, like one of the trailers, and they have him in the trailer, and they ask him to rate the characters because he wrote them. Yeah. But the fight, it's like, character battles, and it's like, which one would you rather be your hairstylist? Which one do you think's better looking? But they randomly just pick 2 characters. Okay. One of them, I think, was is it Medusa's floating head?
Yes.
And it was like,
she's very cute, by the way.
Yeah. She's like, which one's better looking? And it's like Medusa or can't remember. It was one of the the Hercules style muscular male characters, and he was like
something like that.
Yeah, and he was like, classically, I'm gonna have to give it to the guy because Medusa's just a floating head. And
yeah.
Although the best floating head I've ever written. There's not a lot of appeal just for the head.
Oh, she's very cute though. I like Dusa a lot.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think he says himself he's actually going off it on a classical looks basis rather than because he like as you said, he wrote the characters, and you can't write characters like when I write certain characters for D&D, and I'm like, when you guys really vibe with those characters, I'm like, and then there's a couple of characters where I was like, I think I've written a fairly solid character, and you're like. And then I I get my notebook and I'm like, maybe later.
Reusable, maybe.
I mean, I must admit the exact same. The characters are one of the cool things of this, which is that I've not had the same conversation twice yet.
Yeah.
I
mean, necessarily not having a conversation where someone doesn't say the same thing twice isn't necessarily a measure of character building.
It's not necessarily.
You come back to talking to us and we say the same thing over and over again.
I'll let John continue.
So for a roguelike, it is unheard of to have this strong a character set in their game. Like the biggest roguelike of the past few years is Dead Cells, which is a great game. I'm not very good at it. I will admit, I think that the story in this game just blows Dead Cells out of the water. Like in terms of mechanics, Dead Cells is side on, and obviously Hades is an isometric overhead view. Mechanically, they're very different, but in terms of the actual appeal to carry on is immense compared to Dead Cells. And Dead Cells, you would die later on, and you just think, oh well. What's the point in going back? I'll come back to this later. Whereas when I die in Hades, I come back into being, back in the House of Hades, and I want to talk to all the characters.
To everyone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want to talk to them all. I want to see what's different. I want to see what's happening.
I had the exact same thing that John's referring to, and I came back on this last run. So I actually played 2 runs just before this, right? And on the very last one, right, I came back and I went, oh, right, okay, let's see what everyone else has to say, right? And I went to one particular character, right, and I pressed D. And they were like, oh, you don't seem to be doing so well. Here you go. And they gave me something. And I was like, would I have missed this? Because it's in a separate area, and I'm like, oh my God, I could have missed this. And that's just what they could give you, what they discuss, and the story elements of it. And the fact that the clashes between the Underworld and the Olympians make me laugh all the time. Oh my! And even between the Olympians themselves, there's a particular room where, and it's one of my favourite rooms, where Pardon?
Is it a bar?
No. Well, no, it's not. It's a reward based room, and it's got 2 of the boons. You can choose 2 of the boons. The first time I went into it, I was like, oh, this is a really difficult choice. This, so I chose the one that I was slowly building on. It was Zeus, to do with lightning. Really. And I was like, right, okay. And then the other Olympian said something like, "You'll pay for that," and I'm like, uh-oh, what's going to happen, right? And then waves of enemies spawn. And then, if you manage to kill them all, you also get their boon, but they say, you know what? I was wrong about you. It's okay now. And I'm like, whoa, dodge that God-shaped bullet.
Also, set AoE things against you to make that particular encounter harder.
Yes.
And it's based on what element they're essentially done. But one of the things when you die and you come back, you're immediately in front of like the desk of Hades, and Hades is like berating you for the way that you died, like as well. And you just think, sod off, Dad. I'll do better next time.
Do you want to know what the Hades makes me think of behind the desk? It makes me think of, is it Igor from... No, Igor from Persona 5 for some reason, when you go to him. I don't know why, but that was the mental image. Although he does look a lot like, the devil, or whatever he's called, in Dragon Ball Z as well.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Has anyone else got anything to say about Hades?
I'm going to play it as soon as we finish on the podcast.
Excellent. Because I think that's about it.
Yeah.
For me, I buy it, play it.
Yeah, definitely. If you've got a coupon on Epic Store, I cannot stress this enough. £5 for this game is far and beyond the best investment you will make probably this year, and that says a lot because we're spending a lot of this year and now an extra month indoors. So keep that in mind. That's all I can say about Hades. Honestly, so good, so good.
We're running a little bit long tonight. We're about on time. I also wanted to talk about Etrian Odyssey, the game that I played whilst I was away, but we'll shelve that for another time. So, has anyone else got anything to talk about?
I think if we're gonna move on and prepare for next week, if you are using a listening service and it has a review function, if you would kindly use that review function, it would help us out greatly. Yeah. We are also on Facebook under Roleplay Life. Is it Roleplay Life Podcast?
It is, yeah.
It is. If you find us on there and give that a like, it is free and it helps us out.
It does.
I believe we also have roleplaylifepodcast@gmail.com if you wish to drop us a line, or you want to shout at us for being completely ignorant about a topic, or you want to give us some suggestions of what we've talked about that you've enjoyed.
Yeah.
I think we're reaching a point where we'd love some feedback rather than being three men sat in various rooms across the United Kingdom, hoping that people still find some interest in what we say.
Yeah, 100%. Email in, please, roleplaylifepodcast@gmail.com, and then the final social, just to continue on from what Guy said, is roleplayLifeP. On Twitter, so @RoleplayLifeP, which is the Twitter one, and I mean I tend to just tag it into whenever we post up the podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just interact with us some way because we do talk a lot. We know that. It'd be nice to hear what the people have to say.
Even if you just want to argue with us as well, that's fine too. That's
what we actually do when we're not doing the podcast.
Yeah, we just argue with each other's opinions.
Yeah. But if that's it, everybody, I think we'll call it a day. So, thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Roleplay Life podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye now. See ya.